Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 372. Today we're going to talk about ZhanGuo. This is a relatively new game from What's Your Game. I believe it came out in Europe last year as a release and then has trickled out over to the United States the early part of this year, 2015. So it is a heavy Euro, which is no surprise because that's kind of what What's Your Game seems to do. This is a card-driven game, which is new for them, but it is basically as if the players are all participating and building the Great Wall of China, as well as installing governors and things like that in the various different regions in ancient China. So let's take a look at the mechanics and then I'll come back and tell you what I think of it. Now here you can see most of what you're going to get in the game. The main thing to note is there's 3 decks of cards. Each round, players are going to be drawing 2 cards off of each deck and playing through all 6 cards. You've got the main area of the board. You can see it's divided into 5 different regions. You've got spots here. You can see the Great Wall of China, this sort of snaking type of thing here. The players will be installing walls there. Each player has a separate player board, which I'll talk about in a second. You've got some player aid types of things here, some bonus spaces here and here, and then as well up here. And then players can basically be playing cards here to this main discard pile or installing them into their player board. So as I said, it's card driven, so let's take a look at the cards. So here I've kind of dealt myself an opening hand, 2 of each card off the stack. You can notice here this says 1 through 40, 41 through 80, and so on. And that lets us know that the cards within that particular stack are going to be numbered at the bottom within that range. So this is between 1 and 40, it's a 36. Now the other thing to note is the color here, and you can see on the back side here of the color. Now these all go with a matching good. So all of these are going to have these orange borders here, and these here will have the brown borders. And the actions and sort of bonuses that you're going to get with the various cards are kind of at odds with the various types of goods that you'll possibly collect. Now, I don't want to get extra mathy about it, but it really adds to the whole hand management conundrum and brain fry that this game really applies. So those are the different cards. And as I said, you're either going to be installing them into your own player board or playing them for an action. And that's all you're going to do in the game, which is crazy because the game is really hard. So let's look at first installing them into your player board. So here we can see a player board. And this is the generic side of the board. These are actually double-sided. So if we flip these over, and you can see there will be different player powers that the players will get. I'm not going to go over those right now. I will just leave the comment that they are all really good, I think. And I would say you definitely should play with them after a couple of plays probably, just to kind of get your head wrapped around it. But they all really kind of give you different strategies to explore, and you're really going to be sort of handcuffed, but in a good way, by the cards that you're dealt. I'll talk more about that in the review. But so let's look at how you would install a card. Well, the couple things to note here. You start with 3 governors in your, or 3 officials I should call them, in your first region. You can see these little icons here match the regions up on the board. We got region 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up there, and then we have little places on our board that actually match those regions in a way. Now there are 3 colors of officials, and so we don't have any white ones on our board just yet, but these can actually come down. These will be moving up and down and left and right here, corresponding to the different regions. And then we've got some other things you can see we can build here, a governor and these temples and these walls and things. So when we install a card, we can put it in any of the regions that we choose. Each of the regions has a maximum of 3 cards that can be installed. So you go ahead and tuck that under there. Now when you tuck a card, you're going to collect goods equal to its color. So here we put a brown card in. We're going to get a brown good. So that's cool. We're going to keep that, and if we install the first card for that particular region, we get 1 good. So if we were to go over here and install an orange card, we would get 1 orange good. Now let's say later on we come in here and we install an orange card here. We're actually going to get 2 goods because this is the second card. So we're going to get 2 orange goods. And this is good because we're going to consider the majority of each of these different color goods. But the first card gives you 1 good, the second gives you 2, but you're going to have to put 2, we like to call them disappointments, or excuse me, 1 disappointment in your particular region. So in this case, we added a second card here to the first region. We're going to go ahead and mark that with a disappointment. Now, if you do a third, you're going to have to get 2 disappointments on top of that. And then you can see that as you add these unrests, that's what they're really called, but I'm going to call them disappointments. As you add these disappointments to here, it's going to block out actions that you can take on the board. And there's other ways to get this unrest, but right now, if we've added a third card, we can see we can no longer build temples in region 1. So that is one option on your turn, is just simply install a card, collect some goods, and possibly add some unrest to one of your regions. And that is your first option, install a card. The second option is to play a card to this main discard pile here in the board, and then this is where you're going to take most of your actions that you can do to build things and all kinds of cool stuff. So no matter what card you play, you're able to take one of 6 different actions. So again, you install a card at your board, or you play a card and take one of the 6 actions. Now at this point, what's important when you play the card, first of all, is this number here, and you're going to look at the number underneath it. In this case, the very first person to play a card here can say X is whatever, X is 100 or X is 0, whatever they want to say. Then the next player to play, he might play a card here, and then they're going to look at the number and say, okay, this is higher than that card, and the next player may come along and say this is lower or higher than the previous card. So that's what you're going to consider in terms of when you play the cards there. But otherwise, you can take any action that you want. So let's look at the actions. Now, as I said, there's 6 possible actions. We're just going to go through them left to right. The left-hand side action there allows you to build a wall or help construct the Great Wall of China. The other one lets you install a temple in a region. This one lets you collect workers. And this one lets you redistribute your official cubes, those red, white, and gray cubes. This one allows you to get new officials on your board. And this one allows you to install a governor. So first, let's start from the middle here and look at how acquiring workers is going to basically affect all this other stuff, and then how the officials are going to drive the workers and so on. So first is you're going to acquire workers. Now, if you choose to take the worker action, what you have to do is you have to have some of these official cubes in a region, and you can take up to 2 workers into a spot. Now, to do that, I've got to move down officials, 1 for each worker. Then I go ahead and load these workers up, and these guys are now ready to do some work in this particular region. Now, anytime that I do this, I have to add, let's pretend this wasn't there, I have to add an unrest to that. You don't do it based on the number of workers, it's just if you take this action, you add 1 unrest, and that's it. So again, you have to move these officials down, and then you can get up to 2 in any of these. So I could have done like this, I could do, 1, 2, and have 1 in each if I want. Now the next action you might do here is redistribute your officials. And you can see you can do up to 3 of them. And this is how you can move officials from region to region, or get them back and sort of reload them and make them available. So I get 3 moves, so I could do 1, 2, 3, or let's move those back. I could do 1, 2, and then 3, or so on, or move this guy across. And this is the only way you can get them to move them up. And the only way that you actually move them down, of course, is when you're actually paying to get a worker. So you can reset them and then, now take an action later to get more workers in the different regions. And next we can get a new official, and that's simply just adding official to your board. And you take and just put the official wherever you would like. Next, let's take a look at how to install a governor. Now, if I have an official of each color in a particular region, I can take and spend, remove them off of the board, and then I can install a governor in this particular region, so in region 2. So I take 1 of each color, and in this case I can see I'm going to install in region 2, so I place this here, and then if I'm one of the first 3 people into this area, I can get a bonus. Now you can place others here, there's no real limit. You will be scoring majorities of these later in the game, but the first few folks in here can do redistribute 4 officials, just like the action we saw, grab another official cube, or just score 4 points. The other thing that you do, let's say I had this unrest over here, is you can actually clear off all the unrest in the region where you install the governor, so that can be very nice. And the next thing we're going to talk about is installing a wall. And just for edification, there's a quick little cheat sheet here, so the costs and the different effects are sort of referenced here. It's not very useful if you don't know the rules, and frankly, but it is here once you have been told the rules and you can remember the costs. So let's take a look here at building a wall. So what you're going to do to build a wall is actually spend these workers. So there's a few ways you can do it. Let's say I had workers in 3 different regions. I could spend 1 worker. I could spend a worker in 2 2 different regions, or I could spend a worker in 3 different regions. So what does that mean? Well, I've zoomed in on this little section of the wall here, and I can choose one of the sections of walls, and based on the number of workers that I spent, I could put it in the 1, 2, or 3 slot of a region. So if I had spent workers in 3 different regions, I could put it here, or 2 different regions, I could spend it there. And this is going to help you with multipliers at the end of the game. I'll talk about that when we talk about the end game scoring, but that's how you get the walls out. Now, if I wanted to build a temple, what I would do is I need to spend 2 workers in the region that I'm going to build the temple, and then 1 worker in any different region. So if I wanted to build again here in region 2, I spend 2 workers and then another worker, and then I can go ahead and put it in one of these temple slots here. Now, each of the regions has 4 slots. These are limited, and they are also limited by the number of players. So if you're playing a 2-player game, only 2 of these are actually active. Now, when you build these, you can do 2 things. The first thing is you can take one of these fat markers, and there's 1 of each that represents each of the different goods, and this is worth 3 of whatever good that you choose. So you choose 1 of those, and then you're going to score 1 point for each card that you have installed. So at the beginning of the game, you're not going to get a lot of points, but as the game goes on, you could score up to a maximum of 15 points, because you can have 3 cards in each of the 5 regions. So you play a card here, you can take any of the 6 actions, but remember I said this number here on the bottom was important. Well, that's because you can see along the top there, 1, 2, 3, there's these little sort of card icons above these 3 actions. There's nothing above or below this redistribute official actions. And then there's 1, 2 cards there underneath the official and the governor action. What that means is if you play a card here and you choose, let's say, the build a temple action, since this card is above that icon, that means if this card number here is greater than the one underneath, then you can trigger any bonuses you may have associated with that. Likewise, if I had played a card underneath, in this case, so this card was 107, and then I played the 36. So now I play that. That's under the card that I played. So ideally, I'd be wanting to try to play one of these 2 actions. And let's say I did the action to, put the governor out. So I can do that, and then I'm going to trigger any actions that I have on my player board. So I've added a couple more cards here to my player board. And let's say I triggered the bonus associated with building the governor. I built the governor, I played a card lower than the previous card. I'd go here and look at any of the action spaces, this one only, and then I would trigger the bonus on the right hand side. So in this case, I can remove an unrest cube. If I had an unrest cube anywhere here, I could remove that. Now, ideally, I've sort of built myself up here that if I had done the action to get a new official cube onto my board, and in the case of the official cube, you want to play a card underneath the previous card, then I can trigger these 2 actions here. So I could take a good of my choice, one of these discs here, and I could do a move a worker thing where I could move one of the workers I had. Or if, let's say I built a wall, so I would get 1 point per orange card, kind of cool, I get 1, 2 points. And then I could get a gray cube or gray official into this slot. If there's ever an arrow like that, it means in this region here. And this one, I could get a red official there. So those are all the actions that you can do on your turn. Again, it's simply tuck a card or play a card and choose one of the 6 actions, and then try to trigger some bonuses. Now, I've seen where you can go the entire first round, put all 6 cards in your player board, and then spend, at that point, you have a decision to play here or tuck. Now, that's definitely not, I don't think, the best way to play it, but I've seen, that happen, and also close to that where somebody loads up 5 cards, plays a card, and then triggers a whole bunch of bonuses. So that's your real decision in the game, is figuring out what to play and when based on the number at the bottom and all that kind of stuff. So after everybody's played all 6 cards, we're going to go into sort of an end of round sort of bonus scoring thing. And I'll show you that here on this side. Well, we can see here, this is the player order, and this is determined randomly to start the game. And then we're going to walk down each of the good types. So you've got here this sort of white color good, a brown good, and then an orange good. Now, whoever has the most of these goods can get different bonuses based on what round we're in. You can see this goes over 5 rounds, and the bonuses are going to change and kind of shift in region throughout the game. So let's say a yellow player had the most white goods. If they want, they can go over here and choose to take that action, which means they can put any official cube in the region 1 of their player board, and then whoever had the most orange could put 2 red cubes, and so on. And then this kind of changes, so as you get later you can build a wall for free, you can build a temple, but you don't get to take the cool fatty good here. You can install a governor, you get 2 workers in region 4, and so on. So as this, let's say it happened like this, and then what we're going to do is we're going to shift these over, and this becomes a new turn order. Now if somebody was left behind, then they're going to shift up to the top, and then the turn order is going to reset that way. So if you don't get any bonuses, at least you get to go first next turn. And it's possible to get all the bonuses theoretically. So if yellow had the most white, the most orange, and the most brown, they can take and get those bonuses. Now here's the cool thing. When I take a bonus, let's say yellow gets the orange bonus, they have to take and actually turn in those items back to the bank. So now they're at 0. And if they had one of the little fatty ones here, then they would have to return that back to the board as well. You don't have to take the bonus if you don't want to. If you see one coming up in the next round that's going to be a lot better for you, you don't have to do that. So then the next player would have the opportunity to take that bonus. And you're also going to be giving up turn order. So this is a little mini game all by itself. Then at the end of the game, after you get your bonuses here, you will spend your cubes, so you might actually hold them, because whoever has the most in white, orange, and brown is going to get a couple extra points. Not really that many, but you can get those points there. So that's the 5 rounds there, and then we're going to do some end game scoring bonuses. So let's take a look at some of those. So first let's look at the walls. Okay, so you've got here the 1, 2, and 3 spots, and you have associated with each of these areas, if I move up here like so, then these are associated with these spots here, and depending on which slot you're in, you're going to get bonus points based on what's happening on your player board, for example. So you can see here in this example, we're in the 2 slots. So that means we're going to take that middle multiplier. If we're in the 3 slot, you take the big one. If you're in the 1 slot, you take the little one. But again, you spent more to get to the good spot. You can never have more than one wall in each of the different sections. So in this case, you take 3 points for each region where you have 3 cards. So if you had, let's say you filled up 4 regions, you would get 12 points, right? But if you got the 4 slot, you'd get 16. And in this example would be, you would get 1, 2, or 3 points for each region that had at least 1 brown card in it. And if we move over here, for each region that was empty of the unrest, you get 1, 2, or 3 points. So those are just some of the wall multipliers that you'll get at the end of the game. And then over here on the side of the board, you've got kind of 2 sections for bonus scoring. I'm going to zoom in on one, but these are basically identical, but there's randomized tiles that kind of make it different. So let's zoom in here. There we go. So these tiles here you can see are randomized, and so there's a bunch of these little governor randomization tiles, and then there's some here for the temples there. These are going to be put out each game, and so the way that you get these bonuses is, let's say you've built a temple in region 2 and region 3, and you're the red player. You'll immediately go and mark that particular slot, and you'll take the highest one available. So this is 4 points. Let's say the red player also built wall sections, and each of the sections has these flags next to them. So if I got 1 in this section, 1 in this section, and then 2 in these sections here, because there's multiples per, I'll go ahead and mark that. Or if the yellow had gotten in here first, then red would come in afterwards. Now you can see this is telling us I'm going to get 2 times the amount of points that I'm on, because I have 2 discs here. So in this I get 4 plus 8 for a total of 12 points there. And then if I had somehow gotten into here, let's give the yellow player the benefit of the doubt. He didn't get totally skunked. All right, so if I'm in here, the red player, since he's got 3 discs, he's going to get 3 times. So 6, 12, 12. So 24, 30 points. And then yellow, so again, since he's got 2, he's going to get 6, 16. So 5 times 2 is 10. So there's 2 sections of this, one for up there and then one for down here. So you can try to go and do all these or whatever. So there's a different ways to sort of plan your end game strategy based on the bonuses on the walls and how the cards go in your board and all this stuff over here. Now there's one last end game bonus, and that is outlined here. You're going to score each of the 5 regions. Remember, we're installing governors in these different slots here. Whoever has the most governors in a particular region is going to get 9 points plus 3 points for each of their governors. Now if there's a tie, you kind of divide that up and split the points, but you can also get quite a few points just for installing the governors out on the board. So that is the game, and it's tricky because it's very simple. You either tuck a card or play a card, and you take one of only 6 different actions. But you have a lot to try to plan for, and you are just ham-fisted and dealt 6 cards and stuck with them. So let's go to the review. Okay, so what do I think of the game? Well, I really enjoyed this game, but it is a wallop of a game. Let me tell you that right now. So first, let's talk about player count. I think, and I know that I prefer the game with 2 and 3 players. 4 players is a lot to take in. And I'm not saying that I would not play it with 4 players. I'd actually look forward to playing it with 4 players, but you're in for a lot. And the one sort of knock against it is when you play the cards and you're trying to plan to play a higher or lower card, that's a little bit more manageable and controlling in a 2 and 3 player game, because you can kind of see what your opponents are about to do. Because you're like, okay, all of the big cards, the higher number cards, are dealing with, like I said, they're dealing with the wood, they're dealing with building the walls and the temples and things. So you can tell what they're kind of doing based on which goods they're, the cards they've loaded up and which officials and workers they have and how they've arranged the workers on their region board. So you can get a sense they're going to play a high card probably, and how high is kind of the interesting thing to do, is like, how high do I go? Because then I'm giving my opponent an easy undercard or an easy high card. If you play in the middle, sometimes they may not have the right card, especially as your hand dwindles down. So that's a little bit more manageable and interesting. It's almost like a weird role selection kind of thing. It feels like that kind of vibe where it's like, okay, does he choose trader or I choose producer or whatever? It's very interesting that way. But with more players, it's like kind of like a roller coaster. So if you hitch your wagon to activating the bonuses to run your engine too much with a 4-player game, you can kind of get hosed, because if you can play a card into the action without doing any of the bonuses, that's lame. I mean, you've had a really lame turn and really tripped up and stumbled and fell and landed in the mud, and they're dirty, and it was a bad scene, right? So that's tricky. So you can plan a little bit easier with that with 2 and 3 players, but I do not dislike it with 4. I would still totally play it. It's just hard, right? That's okay. A lot to take in. Like I said, if you go through the walkthrough, a lot of bonuses to try to plan for. You spend a lot of time building up your engine early on, but then you do get that satisfaction as the engine develops and you get lots of bonuses and cool things happening. The player powers on the other side, I think, are kind of a must, but I would say not until you've played it at least once or twice, maybe. It depends on the person, right? How quickly you rock it. But they all add you kind of bonuses on top of what you've already got in, tucking the cards. So they're always like these little bonus actions. Like if you build a temple, you get a good, or you can move a worker, or you can get a worker, and every time you get a worker, you can clear an unrest. So there's those little things that you can do, and it's like, here's some for free. You're like, oh, sweet. So that's pretty cool, but it's also adds to the AP, of course, because you're like, oh, if I do this, I've got this and this and this. And you, like, right from the beginning of the game, you've got that little extra sort of chunk to chew on. So my opinion, I would play it and kind of get used to it, because it is a very different feeling of a game. And what it really excels at, and the thing that I really like about it, is it takes this whole idea of hand management and just, I mean, it is a point salad kind of area control Euro type of thing going on. So that part of it is sort of like, okay, I've seen this 100 times. But the hand management part of it, and how just sort of pure that is, of tuck a card, play a card, that's really cool. And, one thing that, some people I think will have a problem with is like, man, I can't mitigate my card draw. Which, yeah, but it's like, I know there's a pathway here. Like, you just look and play and you're like, okay, it's not doing the greatest thing for me right now, but I know if I stick with this, it's going to work out. And usually it does, and you can score a good chunk of points with it. So I like that aspect. If you're really into hand management, like you like a San Juan or a Race to the Galaxy or some other of those style of games, this is really going to test your mettle and test your patience, but all that in a cool, fun way for a nice, heavy experience. Yeah, I mean, I'd say the only knock on it is it's kind of like, I hate this kind of set collection area control stuff that everything has nowadays. So there's that part of it, but I think the hand management aspect that makes it so different than a lot of the other style of Euros that are recent. So it's got that sort of trappings of that but that hand management is really the cool, cool different thing. So it is sort of what we've seen before, but investigated in a new and crazily brain burny but fun way, I think. But it's very easy to digest. I mean, like I said, that's cool. It's like, oh, this is easy. I just tuck this. Okay, I'll get that bonus later, and I'll play this card and do that action. But then that simplicity is just, you're like, what? By the third round, it's like, oh my gosh, let's start over. And like every time I play this, I actually played this a few months ago for the first time, and then was like, oh, let's start over like in the third round. And then I got a chance to play it again, and I was like, the same thing. I should have played this like 5 times in a row within the space of like 2 weeks. But so that's the thing about it. You've got to really sort of pick and choose your bonuses very, very, very wisely, because there are certain bonuses that are better than others and aren't going to be that good unless you can sort of stack them as well. Because if you get this action gives you 4 bonuses, you're like, well, you want to do that a whole bunch because it's going to trigger all this other stuff. All right, so there you go. You know if you like this. You can tell by looking at this and watching the gameplay probably. So anyway, definitely take a look at it if you like a nice heavy thing, and this is going to be different, I think, than what you've seen before. I don't know by how many degrees, but I think a good chunk of degrees based on the hand management. Okay, thanks.